Welcome back to Tag Team, the Pokemon Trading Card Games premier podcasting duo. My name is JW Kriewall, and I am here with my good friend, Andrew Mahone. Andrew, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, JW. It has been a busy last couple of weeks for me. A couple weeks ago, Riley and I commentated over the Full Grip Games Journey Together release weekend 4K, which was a lot of fun. It was also a ton of work. Back-to-back 12, 13-hour streams. Yeah, just some really long days. So when it came time to record Tag Team on Monday, both Riley and I were like,
Not happening.
And then on Tuesday, I was like, surely I'll be good by Tuesday. And then on Tuesday, it was also
not happening.
Actually, no. In fact, I found that the exhaustion from that Saturday and Sunday, I mean, because you know what, JW, I'm just not getting any younger. And now, like, the exhaustion that I'll get from, like, 2 overworked days back-to-back like that, it took me all week to recover from that.
Well,
like,
you were, I mean, yeah, because you were probably doing, like, 15-hour day, 14, 15, 16-hour days, right?
Because
you're
I
waking
get
up
there before
early.
the stream starts. Yep,
And then you're setting everything up afterwards. Yep.
And it's not like I'm finished and then I'm like on Saturday night, you know. Then I've got people who travel from out of town that I have to see. You know, we go out to dinner. I'm not home till 1 or 2. Oh, it took me all week to recover from that. But finally, I will say today, on this Monday, I'm doing great.
Well, that looked like such a fun event. I was able to catch some of the stream, and you guys did great. You and Riley did awesome. And the event seemed to be, I mean, we talked about the attendance numbers, very high. Everything seemed to be flowing very smoothly. I didn't see any, I mean, I wasn't able to watch too much, but, you know, nothing on the stream seemed out of place. So overall, pretty successful event from my perspective.
Yeah, it was awesome. We had a great turnout for Standard and Gym Leader Challenge. 160 players for Standard, 125 or so for Gym Leader Challenge. Some really big turnout, and I mean, it went so well that we're already pushing for our next one, which is going to be the Destined Rivals doubleheader at Full Grip, and it's going to be a 6K. So the Standard and the Gym Leader Challenge, both 3K events, which is really cool. It's going to be the biggest, you know, prize pool for a Gym Leader Challenge event I think that we've ever held. I think we had a 2.5 once or something, but
yeah. Well, I love that the events now mirror regional prizing, right? Because you have, you know, 1,000, 700, and on down, you know, kind of a tenth of what you could earn at a regional, but also like what, a 50th of the people. So
like
yeah, I mean, it's
guess,
pretty
right?
exciting. You know, that's great. That's really really fun to see. I'm glad that you know, GLC is getting that support. And speaking of GLC, that's a major topic of today's episode. We have obviously some big news in the GLC front. We also have a new entry, new additions to the Team Rockets archetype that we're going to cover, some new cards, and then we have a few predictions for the Atlanta Regional Championships. Oh yeah, those are coming up this week. Yeah, I don't know. I don't feel prepared, but that's okay. I got Jesse to do all the testing. So let's get into it. We got GLC. There was a big announcement today. Andrew, why don't you walk us through it?
yes. So with the huge event at Full Grip, there have been some format updates. Now that we've been able to take a look at our new Journey Together format with all the new Journey Together cards, kind of taking stock of the way the format has evolved over the course of the last year, combined with the direction of the new cards, specifically the Hops Pokemon, Hops Cramorant, Hops Snorlax. Double Colorless Energy and Twin Energy, getting the Banhammer and Gym Leader Challenge format. So huge update to the format, but it feels like a long time coming. It's something that a lot of the Gym Leader Challenge regulars have been talking about for quite a long time, and the Tricky Gym Discord and the Cardboard Warriors Discord the fact that colorless kind of having access to essentially 3 double energies. You've got the double turbo energy, double colorless energy, and twin energy, which if you kind of compare it to another deck, it's like colorless having 3 double dragon energies, with the dragon deck. And Gym Leader Challenge is supposed to be a singleton format, and obviously there are cards with mirror-like effects in Gym Leader Challenge, like Cypher Maniac's Code Breaking and Mallow or Bridget and Gloria. But just like in expanded format where the Pokemon Company kind of will step in and say, like, all right, you can't play 4 Lysander and 4 Boss's Orders. You can't play 4 Sycamore, 4 Research, and 4 Juniper. That's just ridiculous. There are some limitations that we have to place on cards that have mirror effect, because we are going all the way back to the black and white era after all. So for Gym Leader Challenge, now that we've kind of seen these double energies play out within the colorless archetype for so long, it's just evident that a limitation needs to be placed, and double turbo is the fairest of them all. And I think that as more and more powerful cards get printed, double turbo energy is the most future proof of the 3 double energies, and will help keep powerful new cards like Snorlax from Lost Origin, like Hop Snorlax, in check, because it's just a more balanced card. And the Pokemon Company has shown that they don't print these double energies without qualifications anymore. They actually stopped that in the Sun and Moon era. If you look at it, the Sun and Moon era had double colorless energy printed again. They printed double colorless energy in base set, in black and white, X and Y, and the Sun and Moon block. They skipped it during the entire, like, from base set all the way to black and white. They did not have double colorless energy as a playable card. And those formats people look at very fondly for the pace of the format, the power level of the cards. People consider those some of the best formats of all time. And then there's a stark change when double colorless energy comes into the fold. Actually, the Heart Gold Soul Silver formats when it comes back, because 2010 format has it.
Yep.
So,
but see, I don't know. I don't know. A stark change. I'm just going to push back slightly, because, in my opinion, 2010 was peak Pokemon, right? And so, double colorless obviously abused
people like
by
it.
the SP.
I like
decks.
2017 with double colorless energy. I mean, like, there can be peak Pokemon with double colorless energy. The format has to be kind of curated around that power level, though, where it makes sense. But it is very easy for double colorless energy to throw a format out of whack. It is very easy. Look at a card like Zoroark GX with double colorless energy, and expanded format Zoroark GX with double colorless energy. Like, when double colorless energy gets introduced to cards that it's not really supposed to be around, things get out of whack really quickly, actually, which is why they stopped printing those double colorless energies unconditionally in the Sword and Shield block, because they said, VMAXs with double colorless, that could surely get kind of crazy. So they printed twin energies, so they cut off Vs and GXs and said only the single prize Pokemon can use twin energy. And so, like, twin energy was relegated to just pretty much all the bad decks, because none of the most powerful Pokemon could use it. And then Mew VMAX came out, and they printed an Arceus V-Star, and they said, we need a double energy for our Arceus V-Star, so we're going to release double turbo energy, right? And double turbo energy is like the latest kind of, think of it like a patch on the double colorless energy formula, right? They tried limiting double colorless energy to only the non-rule box Pokemon, and they decided that the card sucks and nobody would play it. And then they're like, actually, I think our best bet is to just give it to the -20 debuff. And I think that actually is like kind of the most balanced double colorless energy that they've ever released. So looking at Gym Leader Challenges, this kind of eternal format where there is no ban or there is no rotation, right? So, like, in order to keep the format healthy, you have to rotate specific cards out of the format from time to time. That's what a ban list is. Obviously calling it a mini rotation is kind of like, putting it very gingerly, but that's what a ban list is, because in order, if you just keep adding cards into a card pool, you will get to the point where the decks are so strong, so fast, so consistent that the power level is just so obscene that the format is no longer fun to play. So limiting the double energies kind of felt like it was a long time coming. I wish it's something that we could have done from the get-go, so the players didn't get so used to playing with them in their decks. But
my colorless deck, I just ordered my colorless deck, Andrew. You just ripped that whole archetype away from me.
I think colorless is still really good. I mean, look at the hop stuff. Look at hops.
Yeah, the hops is crazy.
Broken.
The hops is crazy, man. I mean, I was able, again, like I said, to catch a lot of the certainly a lot of the Sunday Gym Leader Challenge tournament, and it was pretty amazing to see the colorless deck operate. Now, that was a deck that I'm not as plugged into Gym Leader Challenge as I once was, but watching it all play out and seeing the hops addition to colorless, I was like, oh yeah, this is very clearly, like, far and away the best deck in the room.
Yes.
And I don't even really, I don't even think it's particularly close, right? When you're swinging, you have, not even counting any kind of energy recycling, like special charge to get back those powerful colorless energy. You basically have the, 5 out of 6 turns accounted for, right? You have your twins, your double colorless, your your double turbo, and those power the Snorlax, and getting the Snorlax back, and the hop Snorlax, right? Because it's a different named card, so you're powering those up, and then you have 2 out of those turns you're using the Cramorant for a single energy, and so like it makes way too much sense. It's way too good. Colorless generally, kind of as an archetype, has of course, it's going to be able to abuse the double colorless energies the easiest, but it also has very bulky Pokemon. So it's not like that you only get a limited use out of some of these energies. Like, you can swing multiple times over and over with some of these heavy hitters, because it's pretty hard, especially in the early game, for other decks to respond.
I think another thing about like the double energies being the target of this ban is that some players are like, oh well, it's the Lost Origin Snorlax. That's just like it's the main attacker that is abusing the double energies in the format. But Pokemon has shown that they're on a mission to just print as many big bad basic Pokemons as they possibly can. If you just like look across all the different types, you've got, and they're all of like a pretty similar power level. You've got the Lost Origin Snorlax, which does 180 for 3 and has 150 hit points. You've got Zamazenta with the Revenge attack. It's 100 for 3, but 220 for 3 if a Pokemon was knocked out last turn. It's got 130 hit points with the minus 30 buffer on it because of the ability. So, like, essentially, similarly tanky. Also a 3 energy attacker. You've got the Gouging Fire, which was just released in the Fire type. 130 hit point Pokemon. 100 damage, does like 170 if like your opponent has 4 or less prize cards remaining. There's a Mewtwo with a very similar effect. It's like 130 hit points, 100 damage, or it's like 80 damage, and like 100 more if your opponent has 3 or less prize cards remaining, or something like that. There's Okidogi, right? Which can have 220 hit points as a basic if it has a Darkness Energy attached, and it's good punch. Does 170 damage for 2 energy. That's just like off the top of my head. They just keep printing bigger and bigger and badder basic Pokemon. They just keep doing it. The difference is that Snorlax has access to 3 double energies that it could use to power up its attack. That is the difference. It also has access to a very robust draw engine, but so does water. The difference is that water doesn't have 3 double energies.
Yeah, you really have to devote
you have to work.
a large. Yeah, you have to devote a lot more of your deck to energy retrieval. Energy. Amassing energy, right, with your buckets and your letters, and just playing more raw energy, right, so that you can power up your guys. So I think overall you obviously are the mastermind. You wrote a very nice blog post on gymleaderchallenge.com that I would encourage anyone who wants to read further to check out. Gives kind of behind the scenes look at what you're thinking and how you came to the decision. I thought pretty well written. I was reading over it just before the cast, and I think the other thing too that I've appreciated with the bans that you talk about a little bit is that you try to shy away from banning characters where possible, right? Where possible, you're trying to preserve someone's favorite Pokemon, right? In this case, Snorlax, right? Because that would be a pretty easy ban. But instead going away from banning that individual Pokemon and instead trying to go for what enables that Pokemon.
For the most part, that's the philosophy is to generally shy away from like banning the newer cards, because that kind of reflects the design philosophy of creatures, right? Like, and if you look, creatures is printing all these big, bad, basic Pokemon. That's just like part of their design philosophy right now. Like, we can't go and just ban every single big, basic Pokemon that they print because they're just going to be printing a lot of them, and they're continuously doing it. But instead saying like, okay, well, what's like, what is making these cards problematic, like in a way that they're scaling maybe a little faster than they should be scaling, and kind of just looking at the format, holistically like that, and has allowed me to kind of be able to pinpoint. And you're thinking like you're trying to go in surgically and kind of cut away as little as possible to keep the format healthy, and that no matter what, I mean, there's always a mourning process with bans. People don't like change. Like, I get that. So that's part of it. And I'm just blessed that people care so much, that they are passionate about the format either way. That's I think the worst thing could be if people didn't care, right? Because then it means that no one's playing. One more thing before we move on from Gym Leader Challenge. In 2 weeks, Gym Leader Challenge will be coming to the Pokemon Trading Card Game Live, which is pretty big news, and we are working on potentially getting that lined up with the recent bans. So I've been in contact with the team, and just communicating to them that this ban has gone into effect. So we're seeing if we can't get that ban rolled out for the Sun and Moon on Gym Leader Challenge format on TCG Live as well, because the double colorless and twin energy stuff is just like way more broken in a Sun and Moon on GLC format. It's like way more ridiculous. Actually, it's like the Sun and Moon on GLC is like unplayable because of how powerful colorless is. So like it's not even like a remotely enjoyable format. So like. So I desperately hope that those bans go into effect in time. That would be great.
Yeah, that's a pretty quick turnaround, but hopefully
it is.
Hopefully they're able to do it. So
yep,
very cool. Well, enough about that. That's some good stuff, though. I think overall very healthy changes for the metagame as it kind of constantly evolves and shifts. And you don't want to keep nerfing the best deck, but clearly in this case, it was warranted. So I think proper move all around. So we got more cards and some new cards from the Scarlet and Violet Destined Rivals set. Now, this has been teased pretty slowly, I would say, over the last month, but we're finally getting into more of the Rockets Pokemon. Now, we had already known about the Spite Ops Mewtwo archetype. We won't be covering those because we have talked about those in a prior episode, but we get a lot of new Rockets Pokemon, particularly the Bird Trio. We get a new Rockets Zapdos for you, Andrew, and for that matter, a new Rockets Sneasel. Pretty interesting stuff. There's a lot of fun cards that are coming out for the Rocket set, and we're going to cover them here today.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie, JW. It's like they bottled up a lot of my favorite ideas and concepts in Pokemon and just kind of put them all in one set. So I am a very happy camper with what I'm seeing so far. I was predicting that they would definitely do another Rockets trio, whether it was Rockets Legendary Birds or Rockets Legendary Beasts, both of which we've seen before. And so we're getting the Rockets Legendary Birds. Great. I mean, I literally have the Legendary Birds tattooed on my arm. Love those guys. Fantastic.
Yep.
Couldn't be happier about that. We've also got just a lot of fan service, a lot of callbacks to the older Rockets sets, specifically looking at a card like Rockets Ampharos with the Darkest Impulse ability, which makes it so that when a your opponent evolves one of their Pokemon, you put 4 damage counters on that Pokemon when they evolve. That's a callback to Dark Ampharos from the Rocket's Returns set, which is part of the Rock Lock deck from that time. Then we've also got, dude, did you check out the Rocket's Golbat and the Rocket's Crobat EX?
We're back.
We're so back, dude.
We're so
crazy,
back.
Right? I mean, this is like, these are my boys here.
Yeah. I mean, Andrew, your claim to fame was really on the backs of this Crobat line.
Of an ability called Sneaky Bite.
Of a similar Crobat line. Yeah.
Which is what it's translated to, again, even just the same ability translation, Sneaky Bite. Yeah. Once during a turn, when you play this Golbat from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon, put 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. And then Rocket's Crobat EX, slightly different from the Crobat from Phantom Forces, is that instead of placing 3 damage counters on a Pokemon when you evolve, you get to place 2 damage counters on 2 of your opponent's Pokemon.
Yep.
So you're still working in.
Yeah, I want to. Yeah, I mean, so that is a better ability, I would say, right? So it used to be better, on the other Crobat, it was 3-1, and now it's 2-2.
It's way better.
What?
I said it's way better.
Yeah, it's way better, absolutely. But I will say, so there's some other things I want to talk about with the Rocket's Crobat. Very briefly, I do want to say the Rocket's Zubat is significantly worse than the other Zubat. Of course, the Zubat in your time, right, had free retreat, which was a big deal because it made, the 3 or 4 Zubat that you were playing in your deck great pivots, right? No longer. The Crobat line, they all got that 1 retreat. It makes it a little bit more annoying to get out of the active spot. But for that slight nerf on the basic, they have really buffed the Rocket's Crobat EX. I mean, that final stage evolution, of course, the ability is good, but then you think about the attack, right? Lethal return for a couple of Darkness Energy, which you can power up with the Rocket's Energy. Does 120, and you may put this Pokemon into your hand. Of course, you're going to discard the energy, right? That is a caveat to that. But the fact that you can, possibly even take a hit with the Crobat, pick it all back up, put the damage all back down. I mean, this seems, just at face value, to be an incredibly strong card.
It's crazy. And then you think about, kind of the spread potential. Think about all the different spread cards there are in Standard right now. You've got the Iron Valiant, can ping 2 damage counters when it moves into the active spot. It could even ping 2 damage counters if you Rocket's Crobat EX lethal return into an Iron Valiant. Even at the end of your turn after the attack, that still procs when it moves from the bench to the active spot, which is kind of crazy. And then you've got the Hops Zacian EX, which you could attack with that thing without even having any energy attached to it. You could just play the Hops Band, and you're doing 30 damage to the bench with Rocket's Golbats, and you could kind of imagine eating up Ralts or Curlia, with a Rocket's Crobat deck. So, and Gardevoir is weak to darkness. The new Rocket's Mewtwo is weak to darkness, and with the Rocket's Crobat being able to kind of come into play and then bounce right back out of play, it makes me think that maybe you'll be able to play this as kind of a single prize style of deck where maybe you're not trying to give up many liabilities.
That's a good point, right? Because you could play some kind of wall in the active, like a Mimikyu, right? And then just make it really annoying for your opponent.
That's what I'm saying.
You're pinging a bunch of
every time you can just return the thing back.
Yep, exactly. Interesting. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but that's a really good application. Then you obviously think of cards like Iono or Reset Stamp, and just set the hand low at the end of the game, and then come in with the Crobat and do a bunch of damage. That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, cool. So I think that the Rocket's Crobat line seems really cool. Rocket's Ampharos is neat. There's the new Rockets Tyranitar that just got revealed. It's got the same kind of ability that the Dark Tyranitar had. Maybe
Yep.
I don't forget what it's called, Sandblaster or something. But it combos with the Ampharos, and that you place 2 damage counters on basic Pokemon between turns, and then the Dark Ampharos punishes those Pokemon for evolving, and then you have Devolution TM in format, which is like ATM Rock. That's why the deck used to be called Rock Lock. So you've got all these kind of really cool callbacks, and then there's the whole Rockets engine,
dude.
or
This
as
is
far as like the supporters,
nutters,
right?
bro. This is nutters.
I think it's crazy.
Can't believe I really can't believe they've done this. Like this, we keep getting the Pokemon, and it's like, okay, that's cool. Like I think this will be good. I think this will be good. This is just like an enabler, an engine, a supporter item based engine that we haven't seen in quite some time. So of course they've already revealed the Rockets receiver. Search your deck for a supporter card with Rocket in its name, put it into your hand. But now we get what is again just a very unbelievable card. Like I can't believe they printed this. And that's the Team Rockets Proton supporter. You may use this card even on your first turn going first. Something's about to go down. Search your deck for up to 3 basic Team Rockets Pokemon and put them into your hand. So you have, you don't necessarily need to play the Team Rockets Proton as a 4 of. You could play it as a 1 or a 2 of, because you have the Rockets receiver, which can go fetch it out in the early game. So just a ridiculous consistency buff for the Team Rockets deck.
Yeah, dude. I mean, this is like, I've been saying that they should have printed all of these like search 3 basic Pokemon supporters like Gloria and stuff, all of those throughout the entire Sword and Shield era and the Scarlet and Violet era so far. Like there should be way more supporters that help you set up your deck that should be allowed to be played on the first turn of the game going first, because the game's getting to a weird point where it's like, it's why they printed, I guess, Battle VIP Pass and Buddy Buddy Poppin', like, so they give you some kind of consistency option that you can play turn 1 going first. But this is everything that really you needed, with the Rockets receiver being able to go fetch it out, and not to mention that the Rockets Pokemon now have Guzma. Like you have Rockets Giovanni, you literally have Guzma too.
I know.
Like, oh man, I mean, this engine has got me really excited.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and then there's even, decent draw, right? You have the Ariana, you have the Archer. They're not terrible draw. But, certainly you think about like comboing it with one of the legendary birds that have, relatively high HP. You think about it, obviously the deck with Mewtwo having 280 HP on a basic. This is really starting to shape up to be an incredible archetype.
For sure.
So, yeah, and one thing, can't wait to see the art, because all these things are getting alt arts, bro.
Yes, I'm really excited to see what like the alt art. I'm always the alt art supporters are the ones that always get me like the most excited.
Yeah.
I like seeing what the full art supporters look like, but then you got me thinking like, is there gonna be art rare Sneasel? Is there going to be an art rare Golbat? Those, or is there going to be an art rare Ampharos? These are a lot of. Is there going to be an art rare Tyranitar? There's a lot of fan favorites in here. There's a lot of really cool stuff that they could do.
I know.
So
this would be my set to if you're thinking about spending $1,000 on Pokemon for an investment piece, I think it's this. I think this will be
dude. You'll be able to get one booster box with that. I
know. I've been trying to like talk to every store owner I know. I'm like, hey, like, I'm trying to buy 2 cases of this set. Can you
run you 10 G's?
Can you help me out, please?
No. The answer is no.
The answer is a hard maybe. The answer is I have an invoice at the very least. But whether or not they can fulfill it, that's a whole other question. But this is like, even before these reveals, are right, because we didn't know about the legendary birds. Those are some of my favorite card arts that they've ever done. Like one of my favorite cards is the the promo trio that looks like stained glass. I find that to be incredible. I love that art. Absolutely gorgeous. I've, stockpiled a fair number of those just because personally I think they look great. And so, imagine like you're saying, the art rare Articuno, the art rare Zapdos, Moltres.
I know.
Looking forward.
That's when you really see what the value of the set's going to be.
Yep.
Like how many of those chase cards are like going to be chase cards.
Well, you got Mewtwo, the legendary. Cards? Yeah, you got Mewtwo, the legendary birds. Probably Giovanni. Probably Crobat, Sneasel. I mean, there's some juicers out there, I think. So, yeah, looking pretty
sure.
Good. Couple other items that we should discuss as well. The Team Rocket's Great Ball is an effective reprint of the Incense. Flip a coin. If heads, search your deck for an evolution Team Rocket Pokemon and reveal it, put it in your hand. If tails, search your deck for a basic Team Rocket Pokemon, reveal it, put it in your hand. And then the Team Rocket's Venture Bomb. This is a really interesting card to have printed at this time because, we think about Monkey Dory being just everywhere in the current standard format. I don't really see that changing for the duration of the card's legality, but Team Rocket's Venture Bomb is just another enabler for that card. There are certainly times with various decks where you're in this kind of middle period where you haven't taken any damage, but you also are really hoping to put some additional damage on the opponent. So this Team Rocket's Venture Bomb in combination with Monkey Dory means that, okay, if you flip heads here, you put 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. Very good, right? It's like you would do with a Monkey Dory. Or if tails, you put 2 on your Pokemon, and then you just move it over wherever you want anyway. So I see this card as being, potentially hugely impactful, especially if we see cards like Survival Brace, the Ace Spec, or Pikachu, continue to be relevant.
Yeah, I didn't think about the implication of Rocket's Venture Bomb with Monkey Dory. That's a pretty cool combo there. Monkey Dory is in so many decks right now. I mean, obviously, huge presence in the new Gardevoir build, which we will be talking about here in our next portion as we move on to standard JW and shift our focus. You're going to the Atlanta Regional Championships this upcoming weekend. I am.
Yes. Sadly,
but I am planning on going to NAIC, so I'll be able to talk, more in depth about what I would be playing as we lead up to NAIC. But
you're kind of like sneakily locked in, right? Because you just had the whole 3K weekend, right? Or 4K weekend.
I just commentated 12 hours. I just commentated like 12 hours of standard with $3,000 on the line. So I'm very dialed into what this format has to offer.
So, okay, well, let's kind of start there. Let's start small, and then we'll expand our reach, because there's a lot of things to look at. We have a couple of tournaments from Japan that we can kind of discuss. The most recent being the Champions League Miyagi tournament, which, while it does include the Heatwave Arena, like half of our Destined Rivals set, none of those decks really did anything. None of those cards from that set really showed up, at least among the top 16 of that tournament. So we'll get to that in just a second, but we'll kind of narrow the focus a little bit and start small with the Full Grip tournament, right? So that was, you said earlier, about 150, 60 players, and was one of the first kind of in-person US-based tournament for the new post-rotation format. So walk us through what you saw, what players were talking about, generally what kind of decks they were bringing, where were players' mindsets heading into the new format.
Yeah, it seems like Terra Box was kind of like the hot topic of conversation with with the new format and that very first weekend. Terrabox, had done really well at the previous Champions League, but the big kind of conversation was whether or not the walls were real, or can your deck actually beat the wall decks, and that was kind of like a topic of conversation that people were going through. The wall decks did not really show up or show out. We saw one on stream. Yeah, I was incorrect. Okay.
That's interesting.
I will humbly admit that maybe the walls were not as good as I thought that they were going to be. And I'm sure you will be gracious in your victory dance.
No, I just that's curious. That's curious. That's all.
But that was a big. I will say though that for the tournament, every local that I talked to was dialed in on not losing to walls. Like every single one.
Sure.
So like they very much wanted to make defeating the wall decks part of their game plan. Mm-hmm. So that was definitely a calculated part of people's decisions with their decks, their techs, and things like that heading into the full grip tournament. I was thinking, based on like kind of watching the tournament halfway through, I was like, Raging Bolt is just ridiculously powerful right now, because like people didn't show up at the walls, people did tech for the walls, and Raging Bolt just feasts on the meta without the walls. Like if Raging Bolt doesn't have to answer any of the wall decks, then Raging Bolt is just probably one of the best decks in the room, and I thought Raging Bolt had a chance to win it all. Mm-hmm. A deck that I did not believe in heading into the event was Gardevoir. I thought Gardevoir was terrible, and one of our locals, Ben Morse, who actually ended up winning the Gym Leader Challenge event, was a big Gardevoir fan in our pre-rotation format, and he was dead set on playing Gardevoir, and also dead set on it still being a very good deck, and like adamantly was kind of talking it up heading into the event, and then backed all of his talk up with the top 8 finish. And I couldn't believe it. I mean, watching it, it was happening. He was popping off. He was getting turn 2 rare candy Guardies, like top decking everything he needed. And I was like, well, maybe it was just like a little bit of good luck, a little bit of he's a good player, and kind of just, maybe this new Gardevoir deck is kind of like Lugia, where the power level is just very high. You just kind of have to like get a little lucky to sack into the setup, and then once you're set up, you're kind of cruising.
Yep.
But then, as we've seen, Gardevoir has continued to be a presence in the Japanese format. So so that was cool to see Gardevoir top 8 our event, and then go on and is still doing really well. So that was cool. But I think Terrabox was the story of our 3K. We did have a Terrabox versus a Terapagos Noctowl deck in the finals, and the Terapagos deck was really just trying to play the best deck at using Briar.
Yes.
I think was just that was what like the kind of the mission statement of the deck was. Like, I'm just going to play a kind of low to the ground beat stick deck, and I'm going to be the best deck at using Briar. And in this kind of like simplified format, where there's a smaller card pool and combos aren't as complex as they were pre-rotation, like the Briar play is actually just a lot easier to see coming down the line. My opponent's going to be at 2 prizes here, and like I could take a 3-prize turn and win the game. So long as I initiate the trade where I'm supposed to. And it was cool to watch Sanjay play that deck throughout. He played the deck very well. Yeah. But Devin was our victor, the 13-year-old from West Virginia, kind of a stud with his Terrabox deck, and he played his lines really tight. He played the deck very fast. Like you ever seen a senior just like flipping through the deck, and they know exactly what.
It gives me anxiety, dude.
They see the lines like 4 turns ahead. They already know as soon as the opponent's turn is finished, they know exactly what they're going for. They know exactly what the deck needs to do this turn. Right? Yep, it's like it's crazy. I mean, the kids are the scariest Pokemon competitors. They are. They have the most amount of free time,
I know.
Their brains are still developing and are getting wired, like hardwired with Pokemon knowledge, right? It's like learning a language. Like, you're best fit to learn a language when you're like young. And
Yep.
if you like start learning Pokemon TCG when you're young and you grow up with that, like, you're
man.
basically invincible. You're like
I
a
know.
Pokemon TCG supercomputer.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
had almost a fully formed frontal lobe when I started learning the Pokemon TCG.
I know.
was at a huge
Sucks to be
disadvantage.
you, bro. Yep. Sucks to
I
be
know.
you. It really harkens back. Old heads will know. This might only hit for like 3 audience members out there. I don't know. Let me know if you're like, yes, I remember this, because this is Pokemon TCG history. But about a dozen years ago or so, Jason Klaczynski, the 3-time world's winning player, hosted a tournament called the Klaczynski Open, which
Oh, yeah.
you might know, Andrew. You might know. I don't know.
I'm
if this
one
was...
of your 3 people who knows this. Yes.
Okay, yeah, okay. So then there's 2 people out there. He hosted the Klaczynski Open, which was just it was a grassroots open tournament. I ended up attending, and there were, I don't know, I want to say probably about like 100, 150, 200 players. Like, it wasn't particularly large, but at the time, regionals were 300 people. So, by that metric, it was a very large tournament. And in the finals of that tournament, it was Ross Cawthon, arguably one of the kind of Mount Rushmore Pokemon players, right? An all-timer, against another senior, Lex D'Andrea. And it was an untimed finals, which I think naturally plays into Ross's favor, but I digress. And Lex ended up winning this whole thing, and you can find these videos on YouTube. Fascinating stuff. I remember a decade ago, I was like, wow, that's crazy. Ross is this world's finalist. Like, he's so good. He comes up with so many unique decks, and he was beaten by who? And this is just kind of harkening back to that moment, right? Because you have, maybe not quite the same stakes. I don't know that Sanjay and Ross can quite compare to one another, but just kind of showcasing the strength of some of the younger divisions.
Oh, yeah. It's always fun to watch a senior player show out with the Masters and prove themselves, because I know a lot of the senior players are so anxious to eventually get to prove themselves, because the Pokemon TCG player base at large doesn't really pay attention to senior results, and that's just kind of the way that it is, right? But that's not to say that many of them aren't very talented players who are going to show up a vast majority of the Masters as soon as they get there, right?
Yep.
So, for Devin to be able to kind of like flex in a room of 160, Masters competitors, beat a world's qualifier Sanjay in the finals, it's like very, very cool. So, huge congrats to Devin for making the trip out and getting that dub.
Yeah, absolutely.
The other story from Full Grip was that Flareon showed up. There was some Flareon in the house.
I think the deck's good, man.
It was not on my bingo card. I did not respect Flareon, but you know what? It's decent. It's not terrible. It's kind of decent. I'll give you that.
All the Flareon heads are I'm sure, excited, elated even with that vote of confidence. It's kind of decent.
I don't know. I'm looking at the top 16 from the Champions League Miyagi, and I don't see any Flareon there, dude. So I'm willing to say that the Flareon
but that doesn't mean
anything.
That doesn't mean anything. Let's shift now. That is a good pivot, though, into some of what we've been seeing from these different tournaments. So the Champions League Miyagi, of course, has a slightly different format, but for all intents and purposes, is in the format that Atlanta is in, right? You could take any of these lists and 1-to-1 net deck them for Atlanta. So
they're literally legal.
they're literally legal. Exactly. I want to kind of examine just as an overview what did well in the top 16. Now, keep in mind this is a different style of tournament, kind of a single game right? And then it cuts off into like a single elimination bracket. So there's a lot of variance that can happen. That's not taking away from any of these players that did well here, but it's a little bit different than what we have in TPCI ran tournaments with the best of 3 and less rounds overall. But what is fascinating to me, of course, you look at the winning list from Shinito being the Dragapult Dusknoir deck. There were 5 Dragapult Dusknoir in the top 16. A deck that I'm personally pretty low on. Like, to be completely honest, you look at one deck from pre-rotation to post-rotation that loses the most. I think it's Dragapult by leaps and bounds. You lose Lance, you lose Forest Sealstone and Luminion, you lose Rotom. These are all big enablers for the consistency of that deck. All gone, but Dragapult still showing up. And then the second, big deck here amongst the top 16 is Gardevoir with 4 in the top 8.
Can't believe it, man. Gardevoir, dude. I thought for sure it was dead. For sure. I thought relegated only to the most severe Gardevoir heads.
I mean, the loss of Kirlia is a big deal. I think it's a pretty big deal. The discard draw to, it's like hard to. I mean, you're not going to replicate that. You're not going to replace that in any way. That's just a historically broken ability, and for it to be, the middle stage of your deck enabler in the Gardevoir EX is just a massive loss for the deck. But taking a look at one of these lists, you see how they've adjusted. It's a lot more. I don't know, how do you want to say it? I mean, it has to lean more into the rare candy. You're leaning more into the EX Pokemon, right? To not only give you additional attackers, the Lily's Clefairy, the Mew EX, but also provide the consistency that you lose from having the rotating refinement Kirlia. So you have the Mew EX, of course, to draw. You have the Pheasantipity and the Squawkabilly also adding in some consistency. So, pretty interesting stuff here. Same kind of strategy overall that we've been seeing from the pre-rotation late game or late format Gardevoir decks, where the Gardevoir EX is the main attacker by and large, and you're just trying to set up your army of Monkey Dory. Same here, right? We do have, the 3 Gardevoir EX as kind of screaming as the main attacker. You do have a couple of Badoo. You have the Scream Tail, the Lily's Clefairy, but
there's no Drifblim.
There's no Drifblim.
Second place list.
Nope, there is not. And 3 Bravery Charm, which I find pretty fascinating as well.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that Gardevoir has going for it, I mean, you've got the Badoo, and that's certainly something that Gardevoir does more now than it used to, whereas previously you were kind of using TM evolution and stuff in the early turns to really rocket those Kirlia into play so you could start drawing cards. Now, no TM evolution. We're just going to item lock and chill, right? Kind of just hang out behind that Badoo as long as you can. 3 copies of Night Stretcher. Some lists are even playing 4 so that you can really hang out behind that Badoo as long as you need to. And then mount a comeback when you come back. But Gardevoir, or once you set up, but Gardevoir is the best user of Lily's Clefairy EX, which I think is actually the strongest card from Journey Together. And Lily's Clefairy EX making it so that you could just one-tap a Dragapult with Gardevoir. It's kind of ridiculous. So that kind of changes the dynamic of things, because Dragapult is a very good deck. And Gardevoir being one of the best decks. Gardevoir essentially hits it for weakness. That's just basically what it is.
Right.
It's like, Gardevoir is kind of the counter deck to Dragapult in a lot of ways, because you just have such an easy one-hit KO response to Dragapult. And then, how is Dragapult going to stream Dragapults when you're, getting chased down by a Guardian? Obviously, Dragapult did win the finals. Best of 1 finals. I mean, it could have gone either way, I guess, right? But yeah, so
yeah, really,
it has been surprising to watch it evolve.
Yeah, it is interesting, right? I mean, the Badoo, we all know this card is quite strong. We were seeing it in Gardevoir. from some players toward the later stages of the pre-rotation format. But post-rotation, yeah, it is interesting to see that by and large, these Gardevoir decks have moved away from trying to aggressively TM evolution in favor of manually evolving up into the Gardevoir, or of course they have access to rare candy, but by and large you're relying heavily on the Badoo to slow down the opponent, establish a board, get 2 or 3 Monkey Dory in play, and then just start swinging with the Gardevoir. That is good enough to win right now, and that's certainly a testament to just how strong Gardevoir is when it loses one of the better cards in the deck and can still perform at a high level. Now let's take a look at the Dragapult Dusknoir deck. This is largely what I would expect players to play heading into Atlanta. I mean, I think there's a lot of strengths of the Dragapult deck in that you're the best user or abuser of the Dusknoir line. You are one of the strongest decks in terms of board control, and you see a lot of players in the post-rotation format leaning into that with the Hawlucha. You can snipe Gimme Ghouls with the Dragapult. You can snipe down the Ralts with the Dragapult if you can get a Hawlucha in play. So, there's a lot of that damage manipulation. Certainly one of those decks that you need to be at peak form, right, to pilot correctly. But Dragapult kind of surprising me at just how well represented it was here in the Japanese tournaments.
Yeah, we didn't have one top 8 R3K. It could be because it's a difficult deck to pilot. I mean, it could just be like a one of those decks that only the your kind of top end players are really kind of piloting at 100% efficiency or close to. So that could have been something to play into its lack of representation in top 8 of the Full Grip 3K. Now I'm curious to hear your thoughts on Terrabox. At our event, Terrabox was seeming to be the deck to beat. Its top finish here at the Champions League Miyagi is a top 16, 10th place. And we had Grant Manley in the chats during our Full Grip 3K kind of spouting off about how problematic of a card Wellspring Mask Ogerpon EX is in our post-rotation format, and how problematic that card is.
Okay.
So what are your thoughts? Is Wellspring Mask EX OP? Were the results nerfed because of the new Shaman bench barrier, which is one of the only differences that the Heatwave Arena set brings to the format? So there was actually the option for decks to play bench barrier at the Champions League Miyagi, though most of the Gardevoir decks did not choose to play it. Some of them did. So that was a slight change.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? Because it's probably like a little bit of that chicken or egg, where it's do you hope everyone else techs in the Shaman so that the water pond box decks don't succeed, and then if everyone else does it, you don't have to put in you don't have to devote the deck space to the Shaman. I mean, it's very interesting to see that kind of play out a little bit there. But I think that Terrabox is I'm scared of Terrabox because it has such a high power level, and I am not scared of Terrabox because I really, truly don't believe that most players, even like the above average player, will be able to pilot Terrabox to the efficiency that they need to pose a major threat in the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little grindy and complicated.
It
is very easy to misplay.
It is very easy to misplay. It's very easy to mismanage resources. It's very easy to think you have a correct line, only a turn or two down the road see, oh, I should have attached the energy there, or I should have preemptively benched this Pokemon, or I should have had a Hoot Hoot, or whatever it was. There's a lot of little decisions. So it's kind of interesting there because I think that Terrabox will be among the better players, one of the more played decks, and I think it will have a lot of success. But that said, I think the average player or even the above average player that chooses Terrabox is going to, if they haven't practiced it enough, like they're going to just, flame out in Atlanta. It's not the kind of deck that you can just pick up and expect the strength of the deck to carry you. Like, it is a very strong deck, but you have to know how to pilot it very well. And so that takes a lot of time. That takes a lot of dedication. If you're here and it's it's Tuesday or Wednesday morning, you're listening to this podcast, and you have not practiced with the Noctowl engine, either the Terrabox or the Terrapagos Noctowl decks, it's over, dude. Like, you're not going to get it. You're really not going to get it to an extent that you could expect to make a deep run in the tournament. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's given me a little bit of flashback to when the Intellion line was kind of happening in Standard. It's so easy to kind of cook yourself, except the Intellion line had scoop up net, so you could there was a certain amount of misplay that was allotted to you with scoop up net, because you could misuse your shady dealings pretty extensively and still come out with wins, because you just had scoop up nets to reuse your shady dealings like kind of ad nauseum. It was really just that broken. But this is like, you can't reuse them that easily. I mean, you could reuse the Noctowls by like discarding them when your stadium gets bumped and then like bringing them back like that, or by using a Turo scenario on one, like as a kind of a little workaround that you can do. But your Noctowl are a much more finite resource than Intellion ever was with shady dealings, and that was something that I did see quite a bit, and I've seen quite a bit at League as well, because I'm also producing the Wednesday night League tournament. So when I see our locals come in and try to pick up the Terra box, it is evidence that this is like your first time playing Terra box, and we're on stream at Full Grip Games League, and oh god, what's happening here? It's very easy to get lost in the sauce. Now, I also saw, I think Azul posted that people were messing up their Raging Bolt decks by putting Noctowl in it, and that Raging Bolt is better without Noctowl. You got a opinion on that?
Well, it's hard because that group, Caleb Gademer was the one Raging Bolt regional winner for this year, so there is some kind of authority behind that statement. But yeah, by and large, I mean, one of the things that I felt like Raging Bolt, even could have played pre-rotation was the Noctowl, because you're always just missing those, you're missing those one or two pieces. The deck doesn't really have a draw engine otherwise. Like, I'm not going to count Ogerpon as a draw engine. I'm not going to count Pheasantipede as a draw engine. You want to get those explosive turn twos, and I think a way to do that is to play the Noctowl line. So I don't think it necessarily has to be very thick, but Noctowls do seem like they would, slot very well into the Raging Bolt deck, especially post-rotation. So yeah, I'm going to go like a 2-2 line if I were to play Raging Bolt, but at this point it's probably out of the question for me to pick up that deck. I'm looking at Terrabox, Terrapagos, or Goldengo as potential plays for Atlanta.
Okay. I'm thinking, and I'll talk to you about those picks here in a second, but one more comment. I'm looking at this Noctowl list, Raging Bolt list that Azul posted. It's got 1,300 likes. And I don't know, if you were like someone who's like, dang, all these newfangled decks are too complicated, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed, like I would push you towards something like that.
Oh, totally 100%. Yeah, Raging Bolt is definitely
someone who is like, I'm showing up, the Noctowl engine is intimidating. You're right, guys. What do? I used to play Lugia, and now I got nothing, man. Like, where do I go?
The Lugia to Raging Bolt pipeline is like very
even real. The Raging Bolt has the Area Zero Underdepths and Noctowl. I'll never get out of this, right? Like, no, I think that there's maybe some hope for you with this. With this Raging Bolt list that has zero complexities, it looks like. Actually, you just put the energy on the guy and go bang.
That's right.
Yeah. So, But anyways, Golden Go. All right, dude. Golden Go, and then Terrabox, and then there was one more thing you said.
The Terrapagos. So like Terrabox and Terrapagos
okay. With
are
like Bouffalon.
I mean, you could play the Bouffalon. You don't necessarily have to, but yeah, I mean, Terrabox is kind of the, I would say, de facto. I think I would argue best deck, but again, it's a little more complicated than I think people are going to have been prepared for at Atlanta. Like I don't expect to play a Terrabox player that I don't think I can beat at Atlanta unless they're already like a top 100 NA player. Like if I'm sitting across from a top 100 NA player playing Terrabox, I'm going to be like they're going to play it well. If I sit across from anyone else, I will not be worried. Same goes for the Terrapagos. Again, I think the Noctowl, Noctowl engine is very difficult to deal with, but Terrapagos is a little more straightforward. There's less options, especially early game, and so I do see players kind of swapping to Terrapagos if they have tried the Terrabox and they don't quite jive with it. I think Terrapagos has a great Terrabox matchup, which is one of the big selling points, and it's a little bit more linear. Certainly you could play it a number of ways, either with the Bouffalon, without. There are a lot of different tech cards that you can play as well. But Terrapagos Noctowl, another good choice. The Goldango, I don't know. This is kind of the dark horse. I haven't.
What is it about Goldango? You can't even knock out a Pikachu, bro. Like, why?
Well, the thing about the Terrabox matchup is that you don't even have to knock out the Pikachu. You can just like gust around it. Interestingly enough, you don't necessarily have to swing into the Pikachu. And then even if you do, there are like ways you can do that without compromising yourself and like still keep up on the prize trade. So for instance, if they swing at you with Pikachu, you can respond with a non-EX Goldango and do 130. Just kind of pop the ability, right? And then you still maintain enough of a prize trade there, especially if you weave in a late game Iono and they miss. That can be very, very real. More often than not, you're the one taking the first two prize knockouts. So again, if they go wide with the Latias and the Ogerpon and the Pikachu, you can really take advantage of that with something like Counter Catcher and gust up all those two prizes that they're going to have on the bench. Terrabox is certainly the deck that you're most worried about. You potentially even play something like a Vengeful Punch or a Rocky Helmet, which are both retaliatory tools that do damage based on whether your opponent has knocked you out or damaged you. So that can also be a way to pop the Pikachu EX ability so that you can knock it out on the next turn. But yeah, that's probably your tough matchup. I think if you're going to play Goldango, you're kind of thinking that, okay, the Terrabox opponents that I'm going to play are not going to be good, so that plays into my favor. Or there's going to be enough Terrapagos, which is kind of like, again, like I'm saying, it leverages the extreme consistency of the Noctowl engine, but it's not quite as technical as Terrabox. And I do see a lot of players like Terrapagos has a really solid matchup spread still, and is a little bit more linear. So I do see a lot of players that maybe were starting to play with Terrabox, kind of falling off that to maybe the, quote unquote, like lighter version of Terrabox, going into Terrapagos. And the Goldango, I find, has a solid matchup into Terrapagos. Right, so that's kind of the gambit I think that you're hoping for as a Goldango player, is that Terrabox stocks go down, Terrapagos stocks go up, and and you can take advantage of that metagame shift. But I think Goldango is just really strong. I mean, it's it has that consistency. You can play it with the Dudunsparce, both the non-EX and the EX. Yeah, there's a lot of things I think that are going for Goldango. That's not to say that it can't be, that it's impervious to any sort of scrutiny. There are certainly bad matchups for it out there, but it takes like 50-50s, I think, pretty much all around or better to a lot of these decks. So I like it as a choice.
Do you worry that it doesn't have enough tricks it can pull off? Like there's
I
not
do.
enough.
Yeah. So one thing, one thing that that Jesse and I were talking about, were like, how could we make Golden Go like just a little bit better? So the first thing that we were thinking of was like, okay, what if we played 4 Klefki? Because imagine how sad you would be as the Terrabox player if you flip over Fan Rotom and your opponent flips over Klefki. That would just make you so sick. And then we played that matchup a little bit, and we're like, well, if you don't start Klefki, you just have 4 horrific cards in your deck. And it's really only for the that matchup in particular, right? Like it's really only for the Noctowl decks because they rely so heavily on the Fan Rotom. So if you play against pretty much anything else, these Klefkis don't do anything. And then, you know, we were just thinking about like, you know, well, you can win with like a very aggressive gusting strategy anyway into the Terrabox. So okay, we kind of scrapped that. That was exciting for a little bit, and then we kind of scrapped that in Goldango. And then we said, well, okay, what about like to come back? You could play something like Ceruledge and Briar. That's an interesting idea. So the idea behind Ceruledge and Briar, Ceruledge is of course a Terra Pokemon. So if you take the first 1 prize knockout on like a Noctowl, a Hoot Hoot or a Fan Rotom, you maybe take it with the mini Goldango, and then, you know, maybe they had already taken, okay, sorry. If you respond with a 1 prize, so let's say they go 1 prize knockout with their Fan Rotom, you go 1 prize knockout with your Goldango, and then they come up and knock you out, you leave a board of 1 prizers, and then you start to go 2-2-2. Well, you can make up that deficit by getting a successful Ceruledge Briar combo off. Like that's pretty cool, right? And then it also has the auxiliary benefit of being quite good into Cornerstone. The deck doesn't have a great way around Cornerstone. I think one of the big downfalls of the deck, right? Is like Cornerstone is difficult to say the least, right?
Well, you got to play the Dunsparce.
Yeah, and that's kind of where we came to, is like their you know, Cornerstone will be in a lot of decks, but if you're not playing against the wall deck, you would probably just expect to see a single Cornerstone in the
Terrabox.
You know, in the Terrabox decks, right? And if it's just a single Cornerstone, you can deal with that. You have the little Goldango, you have the Dunsparce. Like there are ways to play around that. And so, you know, 1 is fine. If they play more than that, that's when things get hairy. But yeah, you know, maybe you would play the Ceruledge, coming back to that tech idea. Maybe play the Ceruledge, give you that extra oomph against the decks that might play Cornerstone. So those are just some of the thoughts that we were brewing in advance.
202 Dusknoir, 2 rare candy, dude.
Yeah, you know, we were thinking about, you know, Togekiss, right?
Or Togekiss, yeah.
Like those are that's an idea that Goldango decks, you know, have utilized in the past.
Used, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I could be convinced on some of these, but I think Goldango by and large can just be uber consistent, and I think have a pretty good time.
It's got a good draw engine built in.
This metagame.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Cool, man.
Yeah.
Well, I look forward to seeing what you choose, and I look forward to seeing how you perform. You and Jesse are going to be traveling out to Atlanta, and be wishing you guys the best of luck this weekend.
All right, man. Yeah, really appreciate it. So if you want to get more plugged into the tag team ecosystem, you can find us on X, that is at Tag Team Pokemon. You can find me at Real John Walter, our missing co-host Riley at Smiles with Riles, and Andrew at Enjoy Friend. We hope you guys enjoyed listening to the episode today, and we'll catch you next week.
See you later.